According to Lori Goodman, the founder of the Housing Policy Center at the Urban Institute, she said, large cities and their surrounding suburbs also have strict zoning laws that dictate how land may be used. Zoning makes land much more expensive because you're restricting the use of it. She added that land is very scarce in large cities, driving up the cost of buying a home even further. A growing number of local and state governments, led by both Democrats and Republicans, have begun to rethink zoning laws in response to the nationwide housing shortage. Some local governments have even begun loosening laws to convert vacated office space into affordable housing. Tell me what you think of that. Now, when I talk to some of our friends on the left, some of our more progressive friends, particularly here in my hometown of Poway, California, and we talk about housing and why is housing expensive and what should we do to make housing more expensive, we'll hear from our friends on the left. We need more affordable housing. We need it to be subsidized. Those big corporations, when they build 20 homes, they should make 2 of them for affordable housing, and have another 2 or 3 of them for seniors or for veterans. Or we need to have low income loans, or we need to provide a first-time home buyer help on a down payment, or we need some other program to help overcome the fact that the prices are high. But it doesn't seem to register with a lot of our friends on the left that really we should be addressing not the symptom, but the cause. And the cause is that demand is far exceeding supply. That's why we have a housing crisis. And that's why in California, in San Diego in particular, where there is very little land left to build on, housing is much more expensive. And you get to the point where not only is there very little dirt to build on in San Diego County, that dirt that is available, to potentially build on, a lot of it is zoned for open space. It's zoned to be ineligible to build anything there. Or there are other cases where housing, multi-dwelling units, apartment buildings are limited in San Diego. We already said there's not enough dirt. There's not enough space to build horizontally, but they set limits on it vertically so that apartment buildings can only be 3 or 4 stories high. And we especially see this with the California Coastal Commission that prevents a lot of high-rise condos along the beach. They don't want to disrupt or destroy people's view, but doing that is a zoning regulation that limits the supply and in turn causes prices to go up. So it's funny in a way that the people that are most concerned about homelessness, most concerned about housing unaffordability, are actually the ones that are often pushing policies that drive up those prices. Now, of course, do you want to move to West Virginia or Mississippi? People in California probably are pretty happy in California. That's why they're here. I know there's a certain percentage of the population that's leaving, but California is still getting immigrants and there's still population growth. But yeah, obviously, home prices are going to be lower in poorer states. Therefore, owner occupancy rates are going to be higher. And you're not going to have the case of people that maybe lost a job, are down on their luck, and then suddenly don't have enough money to pay the rent. Because the rent is always going to be a lot more affordable in some of those poorer states, which, by the way, have very little regulation. One crazy example is Houston, Texas. And my son lives in Houston, and he's been there for a little over a year. And we went out there and visited him. And it's a really interesting city. It's very different than a lot of other parts of Texas. Very international, very cosmopolitan, a thriving economy, a great place to be if you're a healthcare worker because of all the research and hospitals they have in Houston. But Houston usually gets slammed because they have very little zoning, that the whole city is just a big sprawl. And that's true. There is a great deal of that. And in some cases that does create problems for traffic. But you know what else is true in Houston? The cost of living is dramatically lower there than in many other parts of America. A lot lower than California. because they're able to build more and they're able to provide more supply. So now, again, I'm not saying Texas is one of the poor states, but it's not as wealthy as California. But at the same time, it's interesting that, or almost counterintuitive, that home ownership levels are higher in poor states, where, by the way, they don't have as many restrictions on land use or on construction. Now, governments are getting creative in their attempts to create new housing in other ways. In September, New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced an effort to eliminate mandates that parking spaces be included in with new construction, freeing up the building of more homes. We see this in San Diego as well, because there are regulations that say for every unit or every bedroom, you need X number of parking spaces. And you need a lot of land for all those cars. But if people are living downtown, or if they're living in another high density area where there's a lot of walkability, or they happen to be living near transit, there's no reason why you can't build more high density housing without parking requirements, rather than having one parking space per unit or two parking spaces per unit. Maybe you only have a half a parking space per unit, or even less than that. For some people, that makes a lot of sense, because they're going to find a place that's more affordable in an area where they want to live, and they don't need a car because they don't have one, or they choose not to use one. But we have problems here in California where people are upset about parking, and they want more parking and more parking. And then they wonder why housing is so darn expensive. We even see this here in my hometown of Poway. Unbelievable stuff. So tell me what your thoughts are there. I think we have a serious housing crisis, and in my opinion, it's entirely caused, well, not entirely, but a significant portion, I'd say over half the problem, is related to zoning laws or other regulations that make construction either illegal or massively difficult and expensive. I mean, we see that in single family home neighborhoods where people are saying, don't put in ADUs. I don't want you putting like a 4-unit apartment building in your backyard. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? When we have these kinds of rules put in place by NIMBYs that prevent development, that give voters the right to stop development, that give voters the right to declare large swaths of land as open space, what they're doing is making housing more expensive for everybody else. And by the way, if you already happen to own a home, you see your home value go up. And oftentimes it's existing homeowners that are the ones that are demanding no more growth. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So let's move on.